If you saw 3 different people squatting at your gym, and each one of them looked like each of these look, which would you intuitively think is the best? I would guess that a lot of you would say probably this one or maybe that one, but definitely not this one. And today I'm going to make a case that this might be the best squat for your particular goal. And that's really where this all needs to start, because all of these 3 squats are great for something, and which one is most appropriate for you and what you're trying to do will be dependent on what you're trying to do. So the first thing that we need to talk about here is what is the goal? What are we trying to do, and what are each of these good at? Because, squatting deeper and squatting in a position where it looks like we're lower to the floor is not inherently better. Much in the same way that touching your chest with a barbell on a press is an arbitrary landmark. Sure, it could be a helpful landmark for some people, but telling everyone that they need to touch the bar to their chest or else is not something that is helpful to a lot of people, and in some cases it could be counterproductive, depending on the person's goal, prior injury history, comfort with the motion, etc. So what are each of these 3 squats good at? Let's go through them one by one. Well, if someone's able to do this, and let's say they have a bar, on their back, and the barbell has a line of force that ends up somewhere kind of like that, right? Barbell, straight down. Well, in this bottom position, this line of force is pretty much equal distance from the knee and from the hip, right? So if you measure this distance right here and this distance right here, pretty much even. And as this person squats up from this position, inevitably, and many of you would intuitively be able to understand this person's butt is probably going to shift back a little bit. At some point, their knee is going to go forward. So this kind of like a full depth squat, if you can do it, will be great for targeting the quads, targeting the glutes, targeting the inner thighs, targeting the spinal erectors. This is a great option for a very generalized lower body stimulus. And so, great option for that goal. But what about this option? This one kind of looks a little bit more like a deadlift. And if we imagine the barbell to be here, right? Maybe a little bit farther back so it's over midfoot, just pretend that's a straight line. What we can see is that line of force is basically sitting on top of the knee, meaning very, very low forces on the quads, but it's a massive distance. Look how long this distance is to the hips. And so in this position, if you sort of just look at these 2 for now, look at this hip angle right here. What is that hip angle? I don't know, maybe 30, 40 degrees. And what is this hip angle? 30 or 40 degrees. So the difference between these 2 is really just, imagine you take this leg and this spine and you just go, whoop, right? That's basically what this is. And so what you're doing is you are taking stress away from the knee, and you are putting it onto the hips and the lower back to a greater degree so that you can train muscles of the hips more specifically. And guess what? Because these 2 hip angles are exactly the same, it's not like you're not stretching any of the glutes or the inner thighs as much. You're getting a full stretch on all these muscles that are back here, the glutes and the inner thighs, which can change depending on your stance, but we'll leave that aside for now, in this position. So this is like, just to label it, this is all around sort of even blend. So all around even in quotations. This one is clearly a hip dominant variation for all the reasons that we discussed. And now what might you think this one would be? You see I have a heel elevation. Well, this one is going to be really, really quad dominant. Why? Well, if we think about that same concept, look at the bar, look at the distances. Here's that distance to the knee. Here's that distance to the hip. And if you think about what will actually allow this person to move upward, imagine that the shin here and the upper leg bone are like a car crank, right? And to uncrank the knee, they need to go whoosh, like this. And these 2 segments uncranking or cranking away from one another is going to be the thing to push the bar up. So even though this has a little distance to the hip there, of course it does, right? Because we need to actually stabilize, the hips in order to actually push through the ground as well as the spine. But this is going to be a really quad dominant variation, not only because the load is far from the knee, but because of where these segments are positioned in relationship to the force that is trying to smush this person down. So if you've been told that deeper is better, this is crap, think again and think about what is my goal and what am I trying to do? Because all of these options are great viable options. And assuming that, again, much like in a press, deeper is better, or in a pull, farther back is better, right? You may be achieving certain things by doing that, but there's always a trade-off to doing something, right? Think about it in terms of like first principles of physics. Every action equal an opposite reaction. And so in this sense, it's like every action that allows you to target a specific group more will have a reaction of allowing you, or really disallowing you, to target another muscle group as much. And so again, if you're looking for a blend, great option. Hip dominant, quad dominant, all great options. No wrong answers without a specific context. So this is why squatting deeper isn't necessarily better, although it could be relative to your goal.